think they're more likely to be a winner based on the record than probably 90% or 95% of what gets merchandised through Wall Street, because Wall Street is interested in whether they can sell something. And I can't recall a report on Wall Street that really gets into the internal rates of return that a business is actually earning. What's more important than what a business is earning? But
Berkshire Hathaway now holds a more than $31 billion stake in Alphabet. That's a position that the conglomerate started to build in the third quarter of 2025, but it really ramped up this year after Greg Abel took over as CEO of Berkshire. In fact, just last month, it added $10 billion as part of a private stock purchase of those Alphabet shares. Now, there's been a lot of speculation as to who decided to purchase those shares, with many pointing to the stake as a sign of how Greg Abel will be putting his mark on the Berkshire portfolio. I asked Buffett whose idea it was to buy the tech giant.
I initiated it. I mean, I normally wouldn't give you an answer on something like that, but I will, because I am not doing anything that he doesn't approve of. He's not doing anything I don't approve of. We talk all the time. He's well, every day. I mean, but he is the decider. And getting back to Alphabet or Google, it's probably number 5 or 6.
Well, I thought it was number 3 if you consider the $10 billion private placement that would go along with that, because that would put it north of $31 billion.
Yeah, but we've got the Burlington Northern Railroad, which is certainly worth far more money than that.
So you're counting fully owned companies as well.
You know, I mean, we are always making the choice between whether we'll buy marketable securities or the company. We look at them the same way. There are some minor exceptions to that. We can't set dividend policy, for example, if we don't own it. But the chances of those being material, the important thing is to buy a good business and to buy it on the right terms, and to get a right person to run it.
Okay, but you've quickly grown a north of $30 billion investment in Alphabet. That puts it, in terms of those companies that you own pieces of, behind only Apple and
American
Express. So Coca-Cola would be smaller, Bank of America would be smaller?
It's kind of close. But if you take Coca-Cola, which we've owned, 45 years, whatever it may be, we don't have a thing to do with running that business, but it's a very good business. And when I say a very good business, I mean something that you can expect to earn high returns on capital over a long period of time. Now the question is, when you get into Google, or any of the AI companies, you're putting out huge amounts of money, and I can put huge amounts of money into government bonds and get 20 or 30 or 40 billion dollars a year in terms of payments from them. So a good business is one that earns a lot more than and has prospects of continuing to earn a lot more than the returns on essentially riskless investments, which you could define as treasuries. But if you take something like American Express, most of the banks earn 13, 14% on capital. If I asked everybody to guess what American Express would, they would come up with some figure similar, but it's so different that it earns 30% plus on capital, and it does not incur more risk in doing so than the banks that earn 13 or 14%. And the trick in life is to find, in investing, is to find businesses that are going to earn high returns on capital for an extended period of time. And that's what happened with Berkshire for a long period of time. long period of time gets to be very important because those doubles later on are very big numbers. But Charlie Munger, my partner for decades, he just pounded the idea that it wasn't a good business just because it was doing sexy things or whatever it might be, but if it wasn't earning real cash, that it would or be expected to do it in a very short period of time, and just be able to distribute it if it wanted to. Better yet, if it could reemploy it as a business, it was even better than one that had the ability to earn high returns, but you couldn't deploy the excess capital of those returns.
Okay, let me ask you, though. Forever, people have thought of you as somebody who doesn't invest in technology. And by the way, you've described yourself as somebody who doesn't invest in technology. Obviously, the biggest position in the Berkshire portfolio is Apple, a position that you put on, but at the time you called that a consumer company. Google, you just called an AI company. So what happened?
Google, the real question with Google and all of its competitors now, because they're all laying out hundreds of billions. I mean,
they're big capex spenders.
So, yeah, and that's real money. I mean, if our railroad were to lay out 300 million or billion or 200 billion, you know, that kind of money wasn't even put in the railroad business, you know, in terms of developing it. So, and that's the game they're playing now. They weren't playing that game with computer software.
No, so when they were asset light, you didn't like them, and the markets loved them. Now that they are
I made a mistake.
Spending heavily on capex, a lot of shareholders don't like them as much because
I think they're more likely to be a winner based on the record than probably 90% or 95% of what gets merchandised through Wall Street, because Wall Street is interested in whether they can sell something. And I can't recall a report on Wall Street that really gets into the internal rates of return that a business is actually earning. Now, what's more important than what a business is earning? But they ask all these questions about what will happen next quarter, or you know, or it's ridiculous. But you know, investing is coming up with, well, probably this close to the most successful long-term investor was Rockefeller, but look at what oil and gas has done over 150 or a couple of hundred years. So he kept compounding at a very good rate, not as good a rate as Geico would have achieved in his early years, because it's easier to do when you're small. Getting to do it when you're large is, you got the whole world looking at you, trying to figure out, you know, how come those guys are doing it, we're not doing it.
Why do you like Alphabet above all others, and what made you initiate this position? What was the eureka moment?
I would say that I don't like it as well as at least 4 or 5 other businesses that we own.
Other than Apple, the railroad,
well,
American Express?
You're not going to get the whole portfolio out of me, but and of course,
but you like it enough to make it a huge position.
I like Berkshire that way. Yeah. I mean, Berkshire earned high returns on capital without. I'm not talking about using the tricks of leverage or that sort of thing. I'm talking about.
But I'm talking about why Alphabet versus the other Magnificent Seven or the other, you know, hyperscalers who are doing the same thing, spending a lot of money, Amazon, Microsoft, whoever it may be, to try and win in this position of AI.
Yeah. Well, I don't want to sit around knocking the others. They don't have any choice.
Yeah.
You know,
to spend like this, you mean?
They're now playing a game in many cases or some cases, where they're playing a game they don't want to play. IBM would have loved it if they just kept playing the game that IBM was playing in the 30s or the 40s or the 50s or the 60s. You know, and then somebody came along and said, we'll get a better result for you, achieving the objective of all the customers you have, because that's all you're going to have is either have happy customers, you don't have customers over time. And the customer's not dumb. Wall Street can be very dumb, and in terms of they can dream, But a guy with a grocery store can't dream. I mean, I worked at my grandfather's grocery store, and we saw, well, we had one store in 1869, and we had one store in 1969. And other people were earning high returns on capital, some on a national scale. A&P, which people don't associate with anymore. In the 1930s, I mean, they were number one, enemy number one of trustbusters in Washington, and they had a very, very, very good hand, and that hand disappeared.
So it's a different game, and you like this game, you understand this game more than you understood the game they were playing before. Is that fair to say?
There's all kinds of games I don't understand. Sure.
Yeah. But this game.
Why should I expect to make money in all kinds of things I don't understand? Mm-hmm.
But that's what I'm getting at. What do you understand about this game at this point? Because most people would say he's never going to buy any technology stocks, and I think you've said the same thing yourself in the past.
Yeah, but I've done it. And actually, one of the most successful companies I was associated with, going back to 1958, was we started a company called Data Documents.
Right.
We started Data Documents because a couple of pals of mine read in the paper that IBM had settled an antitrust suit by divesting. They had to divest 50% of the capacity of what was their best business, and everybody knew it was their best business. Now, it so happens it ran out after 10 or 15 years, and I knew some of the people that caused it to run out. But if you have a wonderful business, you are going to be subject to attack. So it's not a question of whether it was wonderful yesterday. It's the question is how long is it going to be wonderful?
Gentlemen, we brought you the news here yesterday that Warren Buffett has made his annual donations, and this year, for the first time in 21 years, that list does not include the Gates Foundation. I sat down with Buffett to discuss his current relationship with Bill Gates, how he came to the decision to cut the foundation from his giving plan this year, and whether that is a permanent decision, meaning that the Gates Foundation will no longer ever get any more money from Warren Buffett.
That's correct. But in interpreting that, I would point out that I read a great deal since January 1st in terms of what happened with Bill and Epstein. And I read his remarks to Congress given under oath. And I read cross-examination. And while it's distasteful, and while he made mistakes, I made mistakes in hiring all kinds of people or choosing friends and then finding out later that one way or another they weren't what I thought they were. And so I found nothing in there that was beyond what I could see. I could picture myself doing, and he ended it, and I've had situations where I made mistakes about people, or people felt I made mistakes about me, but they, life goes on, and no one bats 1,000 in the business of choosing people.
You're talking about hiring decisions, maybe who you're associating yourself with, and there were certainly some questionable decisions on that came up in the release of these files, but there was also other, personal information.
Which he admitted to.
Yeah.
No, and there again, I would say that, I've known some pretty wonderful people, and I still know some wonderful people. I don't think they've made every decision correctly.
So why, if that's your opinion on it, why are you no longer giving money to the Gates Foundation?
I reevaluated my whole situation. It's just like I've been doing since I was in my 20s, and we'd gotten married, Susie and I, and we didn't really have any money, but we did know that we intended to live fine, and we intended to have a family, and but we did not have aspirations of, having 6 houses or a 500-foot yacht or anything of the sort. So even then, we talked about what we would do philanthropically. But my idea and conviction was that I would compound money at a better rate than society generally, and that Susie would give it away better than 99.9% of the people that were giving it away, and she would get involved personally with the gifts, whereas I like to do things wholesale, and she liked to do things retail. So we had a plan, but we didn't have any money.
Why did you change your plans?
Well, we changed plans because of what I've said out here. The money began to pile up.
No, but you changed your plan now. In 2024, you said it was a lifetime pledge to the Gates Foundation. Now in 2026, you were saying that's not the case. What happened?
Yeah. Well, what happened was that I gave the Gates Foundation a great deal of money.
Maybe $47 billion in total.
And I had no, and I thought that was a good decision. I think it was a decent decision. But I did not think my kids were in any way ready to give away vast sums of money. Susie and I started with them. I think we may have given them $100,000 each.
This goes back 30 years at this point, or longer?
That's about right, yeah. But they were growing children. I mean, they had children of their own by that time. But still, I don't think they were ready for it.
So then is it fair to say 20 years ago in 2006, when you made this decision, you trusted the Gates Foundation more than your children, and now you trust your children more than the Gates Foundation?
No, because the amounts were different. It isn't to say that I trusted them differently, but I felt they were capable of handling it. I was certainly not going to turn something over to my kids and then pull it back from them. I mean, and the Gates Foundation has turned out to earn far more money than they expected to do. They spend more money than anybody in the world that I can think of.
Yeah, they have an endowment of north of $90 billion, I think, at this point.
It's around that figure, and Bill has very substantial resources outside, which he intends to give, and I believe 100%. I believe that they will go there, and I've really done the same thing as Bill in a certain sense. When I put it in, I tell the three children that it is theirs and it's their responsibility to get it done well, and you may find this hard to believe, but it's true. I've never looked at their Form 990s, which they file. I'm not judging each action as it takes place, because you take actions where you think there's only a 10% or 20% probability of success. It's not like investments.
Before we move on, does Bill Gates know about this? When we spoke with you in March, you said you had not spoken with him since any of these allegations started coming out. He said the same thing last month in June when he sat down with this congressional testimony, that he had not spoken with you since January. Have you spoken with him since, and does this come as a surprise to him?
No, it does not come as a surprise. And B, he came by Omaha, I don't know, 3 weeks ago, or I kind of lose track on time, but certainly not 3 months, but since we talked. And we spent 3 hours talking together, and he intends to call me. He's the one that initiates calls just generally, and as you can see, I'm available anytime. but he's much more organized than I am, but he's already proposed another one, and
another meeting.
Yeah, and we have had an enormous number of good times together since we met, whatever it was, 1991. And he's always done more than a share, always more than a share. You don't see me doing the planning or the...
In the friendship, you mean?
Yeah, it's been a wonderful friendship. And Bill and I are interested in enough things that overlap that we find plenty to talk about, and then each of us has got his own specialty to some extent.
But you told him three weeks ago or so when you met him that you would not be making any more donations to the Gates Foundation?
Yeah, I may have even, I can't tell you exactly what I told him, but But at some point, I had read what Congress came up with. I'd read everything, and all I can say is, you know, I don't know whether I've done dumber things, but I've done things. I've just done many dumb things in life. I mean, that is, all I have to do is look at our portfolio. I mean, 4 out of 5 of at least 4 out of 5 of the decisions I've made have not been anything out of the ordinary.
But he was okay when you told him
yeah.
that this was okay.